If I get out of here, you'll lack odds. To pray for your life. These were a couple of the words that old Lina Bukele said to him after taking him behind bars. But how did he manage to communicate with Bukele? Stay until the end of the video and find out. Before starting, leave your registration with the like button and subscribe to our stories. They'll surely catch you. Now, activate the bell so we can begin. The Bukele government has implemented a series of drastic measures to dismantle the power of the gangs. Raids and arrests became the norm, and prisons were overcrowded with gang members. Bukele had publicly declared that he would not rest until El Salvador was free from the influence of the Mafia and other criminal organizations. However, Old Lin was not someone who was easily intimidated. From his Celtic roots, he was in a maximum security prison continued to direct his gang's operations with an iron fist. The government's attempts to dismantle his organization had only made Lin more cautious and strategic. One night, while the city slept, a secret meeting was held in a safe house in the slums of San Salvador. The gang leaders had met to discuss their next move. The old liaison, with his commanding presence and penetrating gaze, led the meeting. President Bukele believes he can destroy us with his raids and arrests. Lin said, his voice echoing in the small room, but he doesn't understand that we are more than just a gang. The leaders nodded, their faces filled with determination. Lin knew that to counter the government's offensive, they needed to be smarter and more organized. They decided to intensify their operations, attacking not only law enforcement, but also those who supported Bukele. Meanwhile, at the presidential palace, Bukele was aware of the gang's movements. He had received intelligence reports indicating an increase in the gang's activity. He knew Lin was planning something big and couldn't afford to underestimate it. We need to get ahead of them, Bukele told his security team. Lin is dangerous, but not invincible. We must dismantle his network. From within, Bukele ordered a series of covert operations to infiltrate the gang and gather vital information. Government agents began moving stealthily, trying to gain the trust of the gang members. At the same time, Bukele intensified his media campaign, making sure the Salvadoran people knew he was doing everything possible to protect them. The tension on the streets of San Salvador was palpable. Clashes between law enforcement and gang members became more frequent and violent. Night raids and covert operations put the city in a constant state of alert. One night, during one of these raids, government special forces managed to capture one of Old Man Lin's trusted lieutenants. Under intense pressure, the lieutenant revealed crucial details about the gang's plans and Lin's hideouts. With this information in hand, Buck saw an opportunity to strike a decisive blow. The operation to capture Lin was carried out with military precision. The special forces stormed Lin's hideout in the early hours of the morning, surprising the gang after a brief but intense firefight. Old Man Lin was captured. News of his capture spread quickly, and the entire city felt a mixture of relief and fear. It was hell in prison from day one. Lin realized that the prison system was designed to break the strongest men. The guards, following strict orders, made sure that Lin knew that he wouldn't have the power or influence he had on the streets. He was led to his cell, hands and feet on each other, his dignity crushed with every step he took. In his cell, Lin found a small, dark, and dirty space. The bed was a hard wooden board, and the toilet was a simple bucket. There was no privacy, and light barely came in through a small, barred window. The loneliness was crushing, but it was only the beginning. The guards made it their personal mission to break Lin. They woke him up at all hours of the night, banging on the bars with their batons, hurling insults and threats at him during meals. They made sure to serve him the worst pieces of food that were often cold and rotten. Every interaction with the guards was a test of endurance, and Lin knew that any sign of weakness would be exploited mercilessly by the other prisoners. Many of whom were from rival gangs also saw Lina as a perfect target. Rumors of her downfall had spread quickly, and for them, Lina was an opportunity to gain rep. During the first few days, Lin had to defend himself from constant attacks, using all his skills and cunning to survive. The fights were fierce and bloody, and although Lin managed to emerge victorious, Each confrontation left his body more bruised and his hatred deeper. In those moments of loneliness and pain, Lin thought of Bukele. Every blow, every insult, every sleepless night fueled his resentment. He knew his suffering was part of the president's strategy to weaken the Mara. But Lin wouldn't break so easily. His mind worked tirelessly, planning revenge and restoring his power. One of the most humiliating moments for Lin came when the guards decided to teach him a lesson. They took him to an isolated section of the prison where he was handcuffed and brutally beaten. The blows were relentless, and the guards made sure each one left a mark. Although in pain, Lin didn't utter a word. He only screamed, resisting with a strength that only intensified his hatred. The weeks passed, and Lin grew accustomed to the brutality. His body, still beloved, grew stronger with each day. He kept his mind sharp, remembering every detail of his torture, every face of the guards, every insult. He knew revenge wouldn't be quick or easy, but he was determined to strike back in a way that Bukele would never forget. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, we invite you to give us a like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. We continue the message from old Lina. Bukele. The days in prison turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Old Lin, hardened by the brutality of prison, hadn't lost a shred of his cunning and determination. Every blow, every insult, and every attempt to break him only served to reinforce his hatred for him. President Nayib Bukele, despite the strict security measures and constant surveillance, had managed to establish a communication network with his loyalists abroad. His former gang mates, who still operated in the shadows of San Salvador, were willing to do whatever was necessary to restore their leader's power. One day, while in his cell, Lin received a signal from one of the guards, a man he had managed to bribe through his external network. The guard slipped a small note under his cell door, informing him that everything was ready to send a message to Lin. Lin smiled, knowing this would be the first step in his plan of revenge. With a cunning approach that had made him the feared leader of the gang, Lin devised a plan to get his message across to the president using codes and encrypted messages. Lin sent detailed instructions to his men abroad. The message was to be sent. Be clear and forceful, a direct warning to Bukele that his capture did not mean the end. One night, under the cover of darkness, Lin's loyalists infiltrated the city with clockwork precision, executing their plan in a matter of hours. Graffiti appeared at several strategic points in San Salvador, all with the same message. Bukele, this is not over. I will escape and I will come for you. Lin. The message spread like wildfire. The citizens of San Salvador woke up to the news and images of the graffiti. The media covered the story extensively, speculating about the implications of the threat. The tension increased, and security was further reinforced around the president at the presidential palace. Bukele received the news with a mixture of surprise and fury. He couldn't believe that Lin had managed to send him a threat from the maximum security prison. This demonstration of power and resilience by old Lin was a direct affront to his authority and a reminder that the fight against the gangs was far from over. Bukele called an emergency meeting with his security team. This man remains a threat even behind bars, Bukele said, his voice filled with determination. We cannot allow his followers to maintain this communication network. I want them to redouble their efforts to completely isolate him. Meanwhile, in his cell, Lin learned of the impact of his message through his contacts within the prison. He learned that Bukele had increased security measures and that the government was on high alert. Lin allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. He had managed to send his warning and the seed of fear into the heart of his enemy. But the message was not just a warning, it was a promise. Lin continued to meticulously plan his escape. He knew it would be a long and dangerous, but determined to make good on his threat. With each passing fall, he worked to strengthen his network, both inside and outside the prison, bribing guards, manipulating other prisoners, and using every resource at his disposal. The guards, although more vigilant than ever, they were able to stop Lin. His network of loyalists expanded. Communication was maintained. Every small success, every message sent and received, gave him more confidence and fueled his determination. Lin knew his escape was possible, and with each passing day, his plan drew closer to execution. Outside, gang violence increased, partly as a distraction and partly as a show of power. The gangs, following Lin's orders, intensified their activities, keeping the government occupied and diverting attention from their leaders' true plans. The city descended into controlled chaos, all while Lin moved his chess pieces from inside his cell. Finally, the day came when Lin felt ready to execute his escape. Weeks of planning, bribery, and manipulation culminated in a dark and stormy night. With the help of his allies inside and outside the prison, Lin managed to escape, leaving behind a trail of chaos. And confusion reached Beale. Her face darkened. She knew this was just the beginning. Lin was free, and with her freedom came the promise of revenge. The battle between the president and the Mara leader was far from over, and San Salvador was preparing for a new era of conflict where cunning and determination would decide the fate of a nation. And so we come to the end of this video. If you liked it, I invite you to give us a like so we can continue making more videos like this. Also, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. I wish you a great day. Until next time.